Well, I want to share with listeners, we met in such an interesting and unique way. We were actually introduced by a guest on the podcast, Laura Hosford, and I so clearly remember the first time we connected on Zoom, which now was maybe like a year ago?
Yeah, I want to say it's about a year ago now.
Yeah, and just I remember just the energy and feeling like we had met before, just this feeling of familiarity and open-heartedness and love. And so I'm so excited to welcome you here to the Soul Collective. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It truly is an honor and a blessing.
Yeah, I want to share with listeners, is there anything about your astrology that stands out that you'd like to share?
Yeah, gosh, and in astrology too. I feel like we could go deeper into the human design and the gene keys. It's been such a fun exploration of these modalities and understanding that we chose this soul blueprint as what we're here to kind of work through and move through. So, what's interesting with my astrology is I had originally, knowing the Western astrology, I'm a Virgo sun and a Cancer moon and a Cancer rising, and there's tons of Virgo aspects that I embody, and then the Cancer very much connected to the moon and the emotion. But I'm kind of on the cusp because it's September 16th, and so when you start looking at the more Vedic and sidereal astrology, I'm Leo, Gemini, Gemini, which there's all of those together. It really feels like it's the conglomerate of the Leo, because I am such a people person and I love showing up and I love speaking and sharing and connecting. And I know Virgos and Cancers are a little bit more internal and reserved. So I really feel that it's the full spectrum of me. It's this Leo, this outwardliness, the Gemini, because I love to learn and I love wisdom, I love knowledge. And then in human design, I'm a 1-3, which is the establisher, bringer of knowledge and truth. So I love the knowledge aspect and piece. And then, yeah, just the emotions. I mean, understanding our emotions is such a potent and powerful piece of my particular journey. I it really has been such again, a joy to rediscover astrology in a whole new light.
You said you're a 1-3, and what's your design type? Are you a manifesting generator?
And yeah, manifesting generator.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And I love the blend of those energies. Definitely feel that Gemini archetypal energy, like especially with the third house and yeah, ninth house access. So super fun. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And I know that you are in Austin, Texas.
Houston.
You're in Houston. Okay. So there's been a major shift in just Texas in general. So have you felt that in Houston as well?
Yeah, I was just speaking with another dear sister yesterday about the influx of people that are moving, really, particularly to the Austin area, as you were, kind of mentioning. But it really is interesting. Texas as a whole, and Houston too. I do a lot of work with the planetary grid, especially this last year, and traveling and anchoring energies and going into ceremony all across the United States and even down into Hawaii as well this year. And Houston is a portal. I mean, all cities really have their portal aspects, but with the business that we have here, with the port that we have here, with it being such a hub of medical and oil and gas and just the Fortune 500 businesses, this is to be moving forward in the future. It's also such an incredible mix of cultures here. Houston is one of the top most diverse cities in the entire United States. So it is moving forward when we discuss bringing in new earth frequencies and this idea of seeing us as not separate from one another. Houston is to be a portal and a hub for that. which is really, tickles me too, because I have been trying to, I say I've been desiring to get out of Houston and to anchor elsewhere, which is also part of the conversations that we've had. And over this last year, lots of rewriting of soul contracts and timelines shifting. And I was guided and asked essentially to stay here and anchor here and make some changes and waves within this community for some time. So yeah, there's a lot of influx of, especially with what's going on in California, people are moving to Houston and floods, or rather to Texas and floods. It's a great place for economy and business and cost of living. So there's lots of other very logical reasons to be here, but there's a lot of changes.
That's so interesting. I am definitely feeling that, and just recently have had like conversations with people who are mentioning, oh, I'm traveling to Houston, or I'm going there. So yeah, definitely lots that's taking place, so many shifts, and it's really interesting to, connect with that energy as such a, mixture of different elements and energies.
It is. It really is. It's a beautiful place and space to be. It's not the most beautiful, like externally, like looking at city, but when it comes to the people, it's pretty special.
Yeah. Well, Lacee, I would love to explore your journey. You just posted something on Instagram recently that was like, I love these, by the way. Like, I love like before and after, like stories of transformation. I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons why I got started with podcasting, is because I'm so inspired hearing people's stories, and I feel like we can all learn so much from each other. And when I saw that photo, like the two photos side by side, is just, it's so remarkable and it's inspiring. And you share in the first picture of like really looking externally and giving your power away, and then just the transformation that you've experienced. I'd love if you could share with listeners like a little bit about your journey and what that's looked like and what's been really helpful along the way for you.
Absolutely. I'd love to, and I agree with you. There's so much power and really looking at all versions of ourselves with so much love and gratitude. And I started out, I kind of, in my own inner reflections, I kind of have these like three really distinct phases. And the first one being kind of the ages of 0 to 18 before I left for college. I like to call that my good Christian girl phase, because I was exactly that. I was in all upper level classes, honors, AP. I was in all the Christian organizations that I could be involved in: Cougars for Christ, Fellowship for Christian Athletes, Young Life. I was in Honor Society, National Honor Society. I was a little bit of, without recognizing it, because I was a people pleaser in a lot of ways. I was externally seeking validation during that phase of my life from God, from the divine, and from my parents, and from my teachers, and from those who I found important at that time. And then I left for college, and my college experience, I like to call that my lost maiden years, because then my no longer was I seeking external validation from God or my parents, but rather my peers in society, which is a totally different expectation, especially going to the school that I went to, which was Texas State University. It was a heavily known party school in a lot of ways. And I attended on academic scholarship, and I had not drank or done any drugs or anything going into college at all, because I was so in my good girl space and place. I was actually vehemently judgmental of anyone who participated in those kind of activities. Then here I am in college and started drinking 5, 6, 7 nights a week. I started regularly, and it was, I started focusing externally on what I looked like and how people saw and perceived me. I really had a false sense of sexual empowerment as well, where I thought that I was empowered in these sexual decisions. Yet again, it was still part of that experience of giving my power away because I was really seeking love and external validation from the partners that I was with. So that carried into, after graduating, that carried into my work life. I was always in some form of outside sales. And we know that just the society in which we live in is heavily focused on drinking and partying. And so for me, it carried over into my work life, outside sales. I was still entertaining networking events. I worked with doctors. I worked in commercial real estate, whichever industry I was in, there was a big piece of entertainment. And so I was still drinking 4-6 days a week. I was still smoking, even at that time, marijuana. I was still smoking almost every day. And yeah, after so many years and I think, gosh, 6 different career changes, I was sitting. So I went through a physical breakup, or rather a breakup that ended because of a physical altercation that was really difficult for me to kind of move through and kind of accept that I had put myself in that situation. And I was forced to move back home with my parents. I had just done my I guess 6th career change at that point, and I was working in commercial real estate. Started my career over, was making less than $30,000 a year, and there was a moment where I was sitting on my parents. I was sleeping actually on their couch because the upstairs was being fumigated, and so I was sleeping on my parents' couch, and I had no money to go out with my friends. And then when I was sitting there, I realized, oh, these aren't really true friends anyways. They're really party friends, because all that I was experiencing and going through, all the pain, I couldn't actually have a conversation with any of them about, because that wasn't the foundation of our friendship. So here I am, I'm 28 years old, sleeping on my parents' couch, feeling like I have no real friends and wanting to kind of mask and numb all of these emotions. I'm raiding my parents' liquor cabinet, trying to find wine and whatever I can to numb what I was going through. And I broke down, and I was just in tears and in so much pain, and looked up the divine, who I hadn't had a relationship and a personal relationship with God in so many years. Because of my actions, I judged myself, and I thought, well, who am I to pray when I'm out here doing all of this sinning? And so I prayed to the divine, and I said, God, help me. I don't know where I turned the wrong way within this journey, where I was supposed to go left and I went right, but I no longer recognized myself. I no longer recognized the life that I was living. I was unfulfilled. I was deeply depressed. And I in that moment of profound, prayer and really surrender, I asked for support. And it wasn't about a week later, I was guided to begin reading again, which reading had always been such a special personal thing that growing up and even moving into college, but I hadn't read for pleasure in so many years. And I was guided I usually asked myself, like, what am I interested in? Like, and I didn't even know at that point anymore, like what I was truly interested in and what I wanted to learn. And so I was like, well, the brain, neurology, that's exciting to me. A book by Dawson Church called Mind to Matter. And it was this, I had no idea what I was really getting myself into with that book. And I probably candidly would not have read it if I realized that it was going really with the premise of the book. But it was a scientific look and understanding at how our inner world, how our thoughts, how our emotions truly create our reality. And it shattered my held paradigms. And like, once one paradigm is just completely shattered, I feel like it really opens the door for infinite possibilities. And I recognized I have no idea how this game works. I thought I had it all figured out at 28 years old. And little do I know, there is a vast world of information and knowledge out there that I have yet to discover. So I remember driving home, and quite literally, I just was looking out at the clouds, and I could see the quantum fabric of our reality. I could see the interconnectedness of all things. I could actually see energy. And this wave of emotion just came over me, and I started crying, and I was just in awe over this life and this existence. And I knew that from there, my life was going to be forever changed. And it really did. It spinned me into a trajectory, and really that began my spiritual awakening. And it was, such a beautiful and special moment. And, all things lead us to exactly where we were supposed to be. But yeah, that was kind of my trajectory from, these different phases into my awakening, if you will.
Incredible. It's so powerful to hear your journey, and there's so many pieces of it that I can relate to. And, it's just, it's remarkable to, because I feel like those surrender points are so key, where we're literally like, okay, universe, okay, God, you know, what what is it that I'm missing here, and really being open. And it's interesting in your story, you kind of share about NLP, or like really understanding through the mind, and that being sort of an entry point to like really understanding more of the quantum fabric and how we're creating our reality. And that was definitely the case in my journey as well. And I'm just curious for you, were there other tools and modalities that really, really played a part in your journey as well?
Absolutely. So that was kind of the gateway opening. And from there, I began seeking and actually had another prayer to the divine, asking to know the truth. I really desired to know the truth of our reality. I started recognizing and realizing there's a lot that we had been lied to about. And so I was like, all right, I want to know really who I am. Like, started asking that question, like, who am I and why am I here? And with over the course of the last 7 or 8 years, 60 something different teachers and mentors, and different programs, trying to pull in all the different modalities that I could. Being a manifesting generator, we're multifaceted, and we all are in so many ways, but I was interested in all of it. And so I also I love efficiency and effectiveness. And so I really started gravitating towards the modalities that I found would help me get where I wanted to be the quickest and fastest. So for me, that was different forms like Kundalini yoga, for example, which really is a beautiful system that brings in breath, it brings in mantras, it brings in, movement, it brings in energy work, all of these different practices, which I found incredibly supportive in my journey and that was kind of also the entryway into somatic practices, and recognizing that the healing that we wanted to do, talk therapy is great, but it really doesn't get to the root of where our trauma, where all of the pain is stored within our body.
Yeah.
So learning different somatic techniques like EFT tapping, the emotional freedom technique, learning, even singing, humming, dancing, all of these more, embodiment ways of getting into our body, being with lots of lots of Virgo and Gemini, and just the world that we live in, I was always very heady, very analytical. And so learning these techniques to get me into my body, which also allowed me to get into the present moment and stop worrying about the future or thinking about the past. They were just incredibly supportive and opened up a whole new world for me. So there was really in all of that, and I kind of call that essentially to me is soul alchemy, learning how to alchemize our experiences into and then integrating them in a really supportive way. And
And I want to
yeah.
share, because like one thing that really brings up in me is this idea of like shifting and balancing and harmonizing the energies between masculine and feminine. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to ask you about because, like in your journey, you share about like being in sales and you're out and, networking and, doing all these things that can be like really external, and to be able to kind of really shift because people ask all the time. They're like, well, what does that even mean to be out of balance with energies, and how do you shift, how do you begin to shift that? So I feel like that's what you're really sharing is like those embodiment practices that allow you to slow down, to connect with your body, to connect with your emotions.
The first iteration of the work that I was really doing when I started doing my soul line work for an energy exchange was around the first company, if you will, I created was called Sacred Feminine Rising. And the intention was to serve women who were hyper masculine, who were leading with their logical linear thinking, to find a more feminine way of surrendering and allowing and to welcome more ease and grace into their lives as they started tuning into their unique soul purpose. And so I studied for years the masculine feminine energies and these polarities and how do we balance that within us. And that was essentially my journey as well, going from this hyper masculine external logical linear thinking. And there was actually a choice moment for me where I was praying I was gifted an opportunity to essentially to choose, do I want to lead with my feminine or do I want to lead with my masculine? How do I want to move forward? And I chose, have chosen to lead with my intuitive feminine, which is very much, and that was really what it was always meant to be. Like our logical, thinking is meant to be supportive, and it's meant to be very actionable. It's meant to, that's what we need to like get out there and do the things. However, that's not what we're supposed to be leading with. We're meant to be leading with our heart, our soul. It's not about doing just for the sake of doing and taking action for the sake of taking action, but rather allowing yourself to be internally guided and inspired and taking inspired aligned action. And so that was really the shift for me.
I love that. I love that. There's a passage in the Gene Keys that I love that really talks about opening the heart and allowing that to lead the way. And then when that happens, the mind becomes more efficient. It becomes more attuned and more aligned to, what is really guiding you from your heart center. So I love that. And Lacee, if people are listening and they're like, I feel like I'm kind of connecting with that, and I'm feeling like perhaps, there might be some attunement with, masculine and feminine energies. Like, what would maybe be like some signs or symptoms that those energies are out of balance?
Yeah. So I love just making it as simple as we possibly can. And really and truly, when you tune into your emotion is always communicating to you. Your emotions are your subconscious speaking to you. And when you become more present and aware, your emotion is going to tell you if you're off balance. And so when you are feeling contracted, when you're feeling, in fear, and really it is just all the, lower polarity emotions are going to feel contracting. They're going to feel constricting. They're going to, your body, you actually close your heart to protect yourself. So that alone is that clear indicator that you are out of balance. And so you want to say, okay, what within this experience would allow me to open up? Specifically though, really it's, how are you leading, right? Like, are you taking action? Which again, for me, this was such a big piece. Are you taking action because you feel like you have to? Are you creating and doing because you feel like you have to?
Mm.
Is that the energy or frequency behind your actions? Or is it because you're inspired, because you're excited and you're lit up and you're like, ooh, I feel like that is such a beautiful indicator of what energy or frequency or what you are moving from. And really, I think the other piece is really understanding is this again, am I being guided from there was something that was coming through and then it just kind of dissolved.
Well, I want to just add,
Mm.
well, I'm sure it'll come to you, but I just want to say that yes, I feel like the feeling of the contraction is such a great indicator of like something being out of alignment, and just know it is saying where your actions are coming from. Like, are they coming from a place of like, I have to do this, or like a place of inspiration? So that's so, so helpful. And I feel like also, for my own journey, like because societally we are really more like predominantly in the masculine, and I feel like for me it was like, okay, burnout, like I'm exhausted and I don't know why, or
Right.
like adrenal fatigue, or things like this where you're really just racing. There's so much mental activity, can be helpful to
Right.
notice those as well.
Absolutely. Really, again, like anything that doesn't feel like if it doesn't feel good, which that burnout, adrenal fatigue, those are states, internal states where it just doesn't feel good. Like frustration for me as a sacral led manifesting generator, like frustration is a key indicator for me that I'm not in energetic alignment with something. And so, our emotions are so incredibly valuable and they're always speaking to us and they're always communicating to us what's going on. And if we tune into them, then they'll illuminate so much.
Yes, 1000%. And I love human design for that way as well. I'm also a sacral manifesting generator, and frustration can be such a helpful indicator, or like light bulb. Okay, like let me just pay attention to this. So, Lacee, I want to ask you something that you mentioned in this conversation was around like studying and like really taking the time to work with so many different mentors and way sharers. And, I feel like you are such a beautiful, embodiment of this, of like really sharing, like that Leo energy that you said, like sharing and teaching and like bringing forth in such a beautiful way all of this wisdom. But I know that also simultaneously and throughout your journey, like you have studied and you've deepened and you've explored. So I would love for you to share this idea of like mentorship. Like, how do we even like, find people, or how has that journey of mentorship impacted your journey?
uh, it really just began to change like I shifted and truly allows for quantum leaps. Like we can do this all on our own if we choose, but we can get so much further, so much faster, with so much more joy when we invite other people into our life and we choose to learn and grow from others who've been there, who might have a little bit more experience or understanding around certain topics. And so for me, especially initially, it's what lit me up. So anytime I would be, and I was the right teacher and mentor, I feel like if you're ready and you are truly calling that person in, they will show up in your field. They will, and that has been true for me over the last 7 years. And even when I've gotten, there's certain times where I've been very specific. I'm like, I want a business mentor who is focused on energetics, who is incredibly spiritual in the practices that she leads. And then the right woman just showed up for me. And then before that, I mean, when it comes to all these different modalities, especially when you're newer in your journey, what lights you up is where your heart is inviting you to move forward. And so there was a lot of work that I did in my first few years in working with Laura around the divine feminine, around working with the womb, around working with the feminine energies and frequencies. And so I was guided to some incredibly powerful priestesses that have incredible containers that it really was around the embodiment. And so really when it comes to finding the right mentors and finding the right containers and finding who you want to learn from, initially I say follow your heart's guidance. It's what lights you up, what excites you. And I also get really tickled too, because when it comes to the mentors and the coaches that I've chosen, I've never read their sales pages. Like, you know how they create these like incredibly amazing sales pages and they're trying to speak to their ideal person, their soulmate person. I've never read one of those pages because I never needed to, because I got to witness them, their energy, their frequency, the way in which they showed up. And something inside of me says, yes, this is who you're meant to work with. And it's gotten a whole lot easier now. But initially, I really had to tune in when I hired my very, I guess not quite the first, but my first specifically towards the business world mentor. I wasn't sure if it was the right decision for me. And I prayed and I asked and I prayed and I asked. And one day I was in the shower. I wasn't even thinking about this particular subject. And all of a sudden I heard in my head, does it light you up? I was like, does what light me up? And then I thought, oh, you've been praying to receive an answer around whether this is the right path for you. And I was like, well, yeah, it lights me up. And I could feel my heart just open immensely. And I was like, okay, because it was scary. This level of investment, like sometimes investing in ourselves can be really scary. And it's not just the time, it's oftentimes too like just it's the resources. We come from this mindset that there's not quite enough, and so the first time you invest in yourself can be quite scary. And so really tuning in, and not just because I've also invested in ways where I thought I needed to. I was like, oh, I need to learn from this person. They're so powerful and amazing at what they do, or I need to learn this particular modality. I need this. And when I came from that place of need, I didn't show up fully. I didn't even, and then on the other end, I was like, oh, I just invested thousands of dollars in a program that I didn't really get much out of because I wasn't fully invested energetically, because my intention or reason for saying yes wasn't in divine alignment. And so I used that as a learning experience. And I was like, okay, that's not how I want to move forward, how I want to move forward with my investing. So
What you're sharing is so, so powerful. And I feel like it's so helpful because it's the energetic alignment piece and being all in. It's like, I definitely feel like, to your point in sharing, it can be like bring up like, oh gosh, this is a big amount of time or this is a big amount of resources. And to feel that full body yes and to really trust in that decision and bring your full self. Because I've had experiences similarly where it's like, invest in a course or a program or something, and then you don't show up, or like maybe there's a voice that's like, oh, is this really going to do the thing or be helpful? And then that doubt like kind of sabotages or detracts from the experience, where like when you just are like, yes, I'm going to fully trust in this, I'm bringing my full self to this, I'm going to learn, absorb, grow, and just enjoy this journey and process. And I feel like those are the experiences that I've personally gotten the most out of.
absolutely. And what's coming up for me also around that too is there were times where I've invested in myself where I candidly didn't know where the money was going to come from. I had no idea how I was going to make these monthly payments for these programs. And because I tuned in and received a full body, cellular hell yes from myself, from my divine team, I trusted and I said yes and I signed up. And it was amazing that just somehow the money would just, I never had to, my fear of being able to make those payments really was dissipated, because again, the money would just come in the most delightful and unexpected ways. Because again, being in that divine alignment and receiving that resounding yes from my higher wisdom allowed me. And what's again so beautiful is in that it allowed me to trust myself more. And so, that's what I really feel like that's so much of what this journey is when we began leading from our more intuitive feminine energy, is learning to trust ourselves. It really is learning to trust ourselves and trust the universe and all around us. And so when we say yes with that fear and with that uncertainty, like we're meeting our growth edge. And I can't tell you how many little miracles have occurred where I didn't even start the program yet. Like just by saying yes in that now moment and telling the universe, I'm a yes for this, and signing up. maybe making that first payment, all of a sudden little mini miracles would start coming my way. And so again, it's just this incredible validation and just expansion, like just by saying yes to being in that container and yes to myself and yes to that path. It really does open up so much for you just by making a decision, and that's in alignment with what you're being guided to say yes to.
Yeah, that's so exciting to hear about. And I feel like it brings up these possibilities of expansion and really giving yourself permission to say yes to whatever it is that's lighting you up, that's on your heart. So beautiful. I want to move to ask you about this journey as a soulpreneur. And, it's something that I feel like intuition and trusting yourself are two elements that are so key on the journey, because there are ups and downs of the journey, and one of the themes that has been coming up for me recently is this idea of progress, and I feel like just in the media or social media, it's like this really falsified um, idea of like progress, or like a one-dimensional way of looking and perceiving that. And the imagery that came through recently for me is this idea of the linear mind or the ego, like being on this journey or this race and being like solely focused on the finish line, and like running the race, like doing the things, like about to cross the finish line, and the soul is like at the very end of the race, like goes over into the sand and just like sits down and starts building a sandcastle, and like just enjoying the journey of creating and being in the sand and connecting to that experience. And I feel like that was a really beautiful imagery to describe this journey that we're on, where it's like, yes, of course, there's progress and there's benchmarks and there's measures, perhaps that we, desire, but then also what does the embodied experience look like for us, And so for you, how have you navigated that? And what has that felt like for you?
Yeah, I love that imagery that you shared too, because again, the idea too that like like the logical linear thinking, we see progress as point A to up here, point B, like this line graph, and it's not, it's down, it's up, it's I mean, it's just all over the place, and we're still getting to the same point, but it is not we sometimes have to take a step back to go to, quantum leap forward. And so it is soulpreneurship is another entire it's a spiritual initiation all in itself. Like all that you have within you, that all of the feelings of inadequacy, self-judgment, I mean, all of that is going to come up and ask to be looked at and loved and integrated. And even when you think you've gotten through it, like as you up level, you hit that next level, and those same things will come up again, like this imposter syndrome and like, who am I? And so it really is a journey of ups and downs and backs and forwards, and as opposed to this linear line. And this soulpreneurship journey, again, like for anyone, I kind of, if I can be candid, like I kind of thought, because I had tuned into my soul purpose and what I was here for as a soul to serve and support others through mentorship and ceremonies, I thought, okay, well, now that I'm doing the thing, it's going to be just smooth sailing from here, right? And initially, with my first iteration with Sacred Feminine Rising, I got quite a few soul aligned clients. Like when I say soul aligned, deeply, I know that we have chosen to support certain people. We have soul contracts to come together again as light family to support one another. And so these were sisters that I had walked many lives with and had deep connections with. And all of a sudden, after like 6 months after my first program, it was radio silence. And I wasn't getting any new clients or really souls to serve. And as somebody who gets their fulfillment out of that, I had to really take a step back, and I thought, okay, well, what am I doing wrong? Was there something that I did? Am I not supposed to be doing this? And all of these emotions of, again, like self-doubt, questioning came up. And at the beginning of last year, Spirit asked me to go within and reevaluate what I was doing and why I was doing it. And there was many months, which again, this is the going back before you go forward. There were many months where I just had to sit with what I wanted to do and how I wanted to show up and how I wanted to serve. And it was very, very clear. And I kind of laugh. I can actually feel my higher self giggling a little bit because it felt safe to serve women around their soul purpose because I was a woman who found my purpose. However, that wasn't really like that was the tip of the iceberg of what I'm truly here to do. And so in those moments of reevaluation, and really I feel like it was bringing online this new mission. It was so clear. You're not here to just serve women because you're an embodied woman. You are here to serve all souls, no matter of what physical vessel they are currently in. And you're not here just around soul purpose because, my love, soul purpose is a byproduct of holistic, total spiritual life mastery. You are here to share holistically. It's not just, it's about the body, it's about the mind, the soul, the spirit. It's about understanding how all of this works together, understanding the laws of our universe or principles of our universe, how those work. It's like understanding the rules of the game, how to apply them, and truly creating total life transformation. Because when you start creating transformation in one area of your life, it reverberates to all of your life. We are not, these areas of our life are not separate from one another. They are all intrinsically connected. And so when you serve all souls, whoever wants to come to you and whoever you are, in a way contracted to work together at that particular time, when you serve them in total life mastery, and really it's inner mastery, so total inner world mastery, then their whole external world is going to shift and change. And again, the soul purpose fulfillment really is just a byproduct of the entire experience. So it
So,
was,
so beautifully said. There's just a couple things that I just want to like pull out
yeah,
because they're just so good. And, I feel like your sharing about an initiation, you know, it is, and there are, and I feel like the journey has multiple initiations, multiple points along the way where it's like, oh gosh, like this is another epic part of my soul growth and expansion, and it might not feel super good at the time to move through that, but there's so much on the other side. And then the other part of that is like, really, it's like building the field, like a field of dreams, that metaphor is like, sometimes we're like instant, like, why is it not here? Why are the clients haven't manifest, or whatever it is that's on our heart to create and bring forward. And it's like really just understanding that sometimes we have to sit with the vision, sit with the energy, and allow that to orchestrate and to sort of crystallize into physical form.
absolutely. And in that choice of how you choose to serve, everything that's not in alignment with that is going to come up to be addressed. And so it's almost like we are being prepared to serve at the level in which we have declared to the universe that this is how I want to show up and serve. And it really is a continual initiation. As you were, kind of sharing, you're going to, again, always come across new layers. Because the reality is when we really get into quantum manifestation and sovereign creation, is that first of all, our desires to create for our life, because I do share a lot about unity consciousness and a lot about, essentially the law of one, law of divine oneness. And so when you begin to understand we are God, source, the divine, choosing to experience, created of God, source, the divine, to experience ourselves. So that for all of our desires, as long as they're soul aligned desires, are actually the desires of the divine to experienced through us. And so our desires are inherently incredibly sacred. And it's also not the fulfillment of the desire that we're seeking. It's the journey of who we become in the fulfillment of the desire, because we're always going to have a gap, because the moment that you get what you want, it's not meant to make you happy, right? Like you are going to have something else. And so we're always having and being gifted additional desires of how we want to show up or what we want to create, who we want to be. Because again, that is the evolutionary journey. And it's not that we're seeking more because we just want more. We're seeking more because it's more joy, more fulfillment, more excitement. It's this incredibly beautiful. So when we tune into quantum creation, like we're always going to have a gap from where we are and what we want to create. So how can we be in incredible gratitude for where we are now and just fall in love with the journey of creation and fall in love with this gap, the fact that during this on the other side of it.
Yes, that's so beautifully said. For you right now in this now moment, what is lighting you up? What is that, excitement on your heart to create?
Yeah, so it really has been around the unity consciousness piece, and particularly around this event that I've been producing and in production around, called the I Am Activation Challenge. And similar to you and what you shared around your desire to create for the podcast, is getting to hear other people's stories. I attended my first summit style event so many years ago, where I was able to witness an incredible amount of spiritual light leaders come and share their wisdom, but also share their stories and where they were and where they are now. And it was so supportive of me to recognize, one, I'm not alone in this journey. Profound missions comes profound adversity. And so to also witness within each of these speakers what they've been through, their challenges, their hardship, and learning of the tools in which they learned and began applying, but then also being inspired by where they are in their journey now. And so I guess I didn't realize then that this was a desire in my heart to create, but it was just very clear at the beginning of this year that I wanted to create an online summit style event, but also really in an immersion. And I thought I was going to make it, I was thinking it was going to be about quantum manifestation or creation, and spirit was so clear. No, it is going to be centered around unity consciousness and this understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, and this understanding that we are not separate from the source of all love, the source of all life. And at the highest level, dimensional level of who and what we are, and quite literally at our core, we embody all of the same qualities and traits that we attribute to source, to God, to the universe. And so we do not need to find love. We are love. We do not need to. So instead of seeking externally for all of these things, which again, so much of my journey was this external validation, instead of seeking externally, how can we cultivate all of this amazingness within us, this omniscient, this, we are everywhere, we are everything, we are all knowing, we are limitless, we are all of that and so much more. And so really coming into because again, the idea of an immersion is this continual submersion in these frequencies and in these higher truths. And we have so much within us, within our conditional programming and within, who we are, just ancestrally, that tells us that we are not that we are separate from God, that we are separate from and seeing God as this external being outside of us, and really programming around our limitations, which, really leads into, our fear and our shame and our self-judgment. And so any time that we can spend a prolonged period of time and energy and intention in choosing different, that truly is the portal for quantum leaps within our reality. So I'm really excited about this.
Absolutely. And I feel like, being immersed in those frequencies, like really together collectively, is such a beautiful, embodiment of unity consciousness. And, you've really brought together such powerful way sharers, and it's such a beautiful opportunity for people to connect with their own I am presence. So yeah, and this we're recording this by the way on the Aquarius new moon and the lunar new year, which is such a auspicious time. So this should be coming out relatively soon after we record. And so if people are listening and they feel like, guided to be a part of this experience, is it something that people can tune into? What's that process like?
Absolutely. So we begun on Monday. So if anybody is witnessing and watching this between now and the next week or so, then the portal will be open to join live. And I would love to welcome anyone in live. And you can register at www.templeofenlightenment.org/I am activation. So fairly simple. And within that registration, they will have access to all of the replays. So if you are jumping in after we get started, there is a portal. Well, all of the replays, all of the embodiment rituals, everything will live in one place. And if it's even after, if anyone's tuning in even after the event takes place, this is meant to be an evergreen product where people can essentially move through these source codecs, move through these quantum activations, and then also witness each one of these amazing divine mirror sessions on their own and come back to it too. I know I already can feel myself coming back to these source codes throughout this next year as needed, because they are so profound, especially the ones like I am perfect, whole, and healed. Often we go on this spiritual journey thinking that we're broken and we need to fix ourselves, especially with the trauma work. And we're like, oh, I gotta get in there and I gotta do the shadow work. I gotta find this stuff and pull it out. And instead of coming from that energy and that we, at the core of who we are already perfect, whole, and healed. And we are fully human and fully divine. And we also have chosen this illusory experience and separation to come back into wholeness as well. So yes, it would be an amazing experience to have anyone join us, whether it be live or to participate in the replays, which will be just as potent and powerful.
Awesome. And this will be available till the end of the month, right? For people to enter in yeah.
Yes, in fact, it will be, they'll be able to register through the end of the month, and then the event goes to February 7th. So it'll be about 3 weeks of time together, Monday through Friday.
Beautiful, beautiful. We will link to that in the show notes. And what a potent um, offering, beautiful. And I definitely want to participate and experience and invite listeners if it resonates and they feel guided to, join as well. And, this is going to be, a potent year and just journey and time that we're moving through. So I love that, you're offering this at the beginning of the year. It's a beautiful container. So Lacee, I just want to thank you for joining, for being here, for sharing your light, your wisdom, your magnificence with us. It's just an honor and so much fun to connect with you.
Thank you so much. It really is an honor to be seen and received and to get to connect with you in this way. So thank you so much for having me.